Hey guys, it's Kevin again, my review for Jojo Rabbit. And what Jojo Rabbit's essentially about is we center our main character, Jojo, and he is basically going on this camping trip of sorts where he is going to be trained to become a Nazi. He very much worships, like, Adolf Hitler and things like that and thinks that he is this hero, but when something ends up happening and he has to end up leaving, he discovers that all this time his mom has actually been hiding a Jewish girl in their basement, and basically through doing this, this really starts to shake up his worldview, and this gets Jojo to start to realize the true sinister nature of what the Nazis have been doing, and that's really all I'm going to say. So Jojo Rabbit overall, I was very excited for this film. I mean, I love Taika Waititi, but I just really love this concept here. It's such a wacky and out there concept, and he's such a creative director in the way, and I really thought this film could be something special. It seemed like it was going to be one of the most creative of the entire year. You know, again, such a great cast here, so much potential, and it absolutely lived up to the hype. I mean, Jojo Rabbit is easily one of my favorite films of the entire year. This is such an entertaining but surprisingly very insightful look at Nazi Germany, but also just the hatred that is, you know, among that nation and things like that. And we're just getting to right now, though, starting off with the cast. And look, easily that's one of the best things about this entire film. The entire cast does some really great work here, but I gotta say, the big standout of the entire movie has to be that of Roman Griffin Davis, who I think is one of the best performances of the entire year, and probably one of the best child performances I've seen in quite some time. I mean, he is so good in this role. Jojo is someone who is very naive, but he also is very likable in the way, even though, yes, he is very much on the wrong side of things, you see his innocence, you see his naivety. He doesn't realize what he's really getting himself involved in, but he also is so conflicted in that way, and Davis portrays that so well, and he honestly gets better and better throughout the film. There's one scene especially towards the third act that I thought was just astounding, and, you know, it's one of those scenes that actors that are far more seasoned would usually pull off, but the fact that this kid really hasn't been in this much, and he's already delivering such a impressive performance, because, yes, he is a lot of fun here, but he also delivers on an emotional level far more than I was really expecting him to, and I thought he did some really excellent work here, really just showing again, the dedication that he has, but also how that is eventually shaken up, and how this really starts to change him as a person. The transformation that Jojo undergoes, I think was beautifully handled by Davis, who, like I said, gives one of the best performances of the entire year, and definitely someone to be on the lookout for, because I thought he was phenomenal here. And really thinking about Roman Griffin Davis, it reminded me of another actress in this film, Thomasin McKenzie, who is, once again, gives a great performance. It reminded me of her in Leave No Trace last year, how she was a nobody, and she's really been getting some great work since then. In fact, another film I'm going to be reviewing later on, she was also in, but she gives another really strong performance here as a character of Ilsa. This is someone who, like I said, she is very much this Jewish girl. She is hiding out, but she also really does change Jojo for the better, and she is someone who is very sweet and very kind, and I really did like her in this film quite a bit. I think that she was, again, very likable, very fun. The chemistry between these two, they work so well together, and I just really love what I've been seeing from Mackenzie as an actress. I think she is quickly becoming one of my favorite young actresses out there right now. Definitely someone that whenever she has a film, I'm going to be excited for, just because of how truly talented she really is, and I'm glad to see her starting to dabble in more projects. You know, she's going to be in Edgar Wright's film next year and things like that, and you can tell here that she is very deserving for sure, because she is quite great here, and I just really loved her in this film, and these two just really anchor the film quite nicely. Unfortunately, now I gotta talk about the stupid controversy, though, with Taika Waititi as Hitler. There's been tons of just scrutiny facing him. You know, why would you play this character, even though he is Jewish, and he's making fun of his own kind, but whatever, you know, people, you know, were on him and things like that, and I would just say all of that is completely unwarranted, because Waititi absolutely kills it here. He is very much making a mockery of Hitler, showing how, yes, he is someone who is very approachable, but he also was able to completely brainwash Jojo. I mean, he is very much a negative influence on him. Whenever Jojo is starting to think of doing something good for Ilsa, Hitler immediately shuts it down. He is still Adolf Hitler, and that's the thing. Yes, the film portrays him in a lot more warm and caring way, but he is still Adolf Hitler, and Waititi really does show just the hatred in this guy, how much disdain that he really does hold for them, and as the film goes on, he starts to become a lot more of a villain, and I thought he just did a great job here. Yes, he was hysterical to watch. He frequently had me rolling on the floor for sure. I thought that he was really great in this role, but I just thought overall he did a really great job portraying this in a very accurate and respectable way. Obviously, again, when you have someone who is as hated as Hitler, and you have someone who, you know, has done so many terrible things, it is definitely concerning for sure, but I really don't think that any of that controversy has been warranted, because I do think Waititi knew exactly what he was doing here, and I thought overall he did a really great job portraying this character. Him and Robin Griffin Davis have some very good chemistry. They work off each other quite well, and I really did like what he ended up doing here. As far as the rest of the cast goes, everyone else does a really great job. Scarlett Johansson gives some of the best work I've seen from her ever. I thought that she was phenomenal as Jojo's mother. Someone who is very, you know, she definitely is someone who is very repressed. She really does have this care, for the Jewish people in a way that you're not expecting her to, and she's very nurturing in that way, and I thought overall she just did a really great job in this film, and I've heard a lot of people say that she could possibly get Best Supporting Actress, and I would 100% be down for that, because I think she gave a really strong performance here for sure. Sam Rockwell is always good, and he definitely does do a really good job here, playing a character that at first is the most hated character of his entire career, but really does go in a very different direction than I was expecting, and I really did like him here quite a bit. I thought he did a really good job. Really, everyone I ended up liking a lot here, even people like Rebel Wilson, who I don't normally like, I actually thought was a lot of fun here. She was very fun to watch and had some of the funniest moments in the entire movie, and even smaller roles like, say, Stephen Merchant, this Gestapo agent, was terrifying. He's only in one scene, but he was just horrifying to watch, and again, that really is credit to the entire cast here, who really all give very dedicated performances. Everyone is very much into this film. There's no one who I thought wasn't on their A-game, and overall, it just rounds out one of the best ensembles of the entire year, and that's definitely one of the best things about this film. But now we have to get to the directing and the writing, which, oh my god, Taika Waititi just absolutely kills it here. He is absolutely in top form. And look, I've always adored him and things like, you know, I loved his work and What We Do in the Shadows and things like that, but he takes it to another level here. He shows that he's not just a guy who's all about satire. There's far more going on with him. Because, yes, he definitely does deliver on the comedy. I mean, this is easily one of the funniest films of the entire year. So many just little gags throughout the film, and a lot of that does work on just how much he is making a mockery of the Nazis. I mean, showing just how naive they are, how they always thought they were in the right, and even though they know that they are losing, because this does take place towards the end of World War II, you know, they know that they are losing here. They know that things are not working out for them. They still have this undying fidelity to Hitler, and I think that's where a lot of the comedy does really come from. And it's very dark for sure, but I think it really did work, and Waititi definitely does deliver in that way, but he also delivers on the heart, which this film has a huge one. I mean, and that's something that definitely did surprise me. I was expecting this film to be very heartwarming, but I was not expecting it to become as serious as it does, because for a good portion of this film, it is very much a satire. It is a critique at how these, you know, how the soldiers were, how characters like Jojo were, how they can very much be affected by the worldview and things like that. But then, about halfway through the film, something happens that is game-changing and huge spoilers, which I'm not going to get into, but it suddenly isn't one anymore. It's kind of like Parasite in that way, where there's a bait and switch, but unlike Parasite, it still does have those traces of satire, and that's something that Waititi did a great job with here. He was able to maintain that sense of satire, but also really take the film seriously. And I wasn't expecting him to do that, but I thought he did a really solid job directing here, and probably does give some of the best directing I've seen all year, and really does show how he's one of the best out there right now. I mean, don't underestimate him. Anything he does, it's just going to be gold, and he definitely does show that here for sure. The writing as well here is just so great. This is easily one of the best screenplays of the entire year, because yes, like I said, the film is hilarious in that way. I mean, just little things that Hitler will say to Jojo, his way of convincing him, but also just seeing how much he has completely brainwashed him is very funny to watch, but it also is very much applying to today, because what the film really is trying to do, it's about a lot of different things, obviously. It's about power, it's about corruption, it's about naivety, but it really is about hate, and how kids, how kids like Jojo, their minds are warped because of it, and they have this expectation of the world. Jojo's someone who, he sees Hitler as this hero. He idolizes him. He wants to become him. This can be a very hard character to write. The whole film could very much fall apart, but again, you really do see that naivety, and it makes Jojo as a character very compelling in the way, because eventually something is going to switch it. Someone is going to come in and tell him, what's really going on here. And it's once he finds that Jewish girl, that's when this film gets really great. I mean, the film's already great up to that point, but once he finds that girl, that's when this gets great, because his entire worldview and his entire expectation of her is completely shaken up. She is very friendly. She's very approachable. She's very attractive in that way. She has emotions. These are things that he was not expecting out of her. And obviously we're expecting that, but to see Jojo's reaction, it's not only a lot of fun, but you're constantly engaged with his character, because as the film goes on, he just starts to become more and more he starts to become more and more tentative of the people that he has been looking up to all this time, and the people that he thought were the good guys suddenly aren't. And it's a really great bait and switch in that way, and they do some really good stuff with that, but also just seeing the contrast in Jojo and Ilsa, but also the similarities in them, I thought was also really well done, and I just really liked what they ended up doing there, and where, again, Jojo ends up going. That's when this film gets really well done in that way. That's the thing, while a lot of this film, trailers and things like that, while a lot of the marketing has been focused on how Jojo is best friends with Hitler, that's not really what the film's about. It very much is about him and this girl Ilsa, and them getting to know each other, and them getting to a place where they understand each other, and they start to respect each other more. And it's a very sweet story in that way. There's a lot of hardships that Mackenzie's character has in fact been through, and it's very heartbreaking to watch, but she really does find this kind of kindred spirit in Jojo, who also has very much lost a lot. And I really did love getting to see these two bond more. I really love the friendship that they end up striking, and it's probably one of my favorite duos of the entire year in that way. And that's the thing, the duo of the film is not Hitler and Jojo, it really is Hitler and Ilsa, and I really did love that here. Because at first when Jojo sees this girl, he is utterly terrified of her, but eventually he does start to tolerate her and warm up to her a bit. And this really starts to change his relationship with pretty much everyone. I mean, especially when it comes to the Nazi officers, these people that he's looked up to, they suddenly start to become far more villainous in that way. And I really like the way the film unravels that, because at first they're very welcoming, but there's always a sense of darkness. We always know what they are capable of, but Jojo, of course, doesn't. So there's a lot of dramatic irony there in that way, and the film really does play with that quite well, especially when it comes to Hitler, who, again, yes, he is a lot more warm and fuzzy at first, but it's because we're seeing him through a kid's perspective, and through Jojo's perspective, Hitler is a great guy, but as the film goes on, he starts to realize just how terrible and just how repugnant of an individual that Hitler really is. He starts to become a lot more demanding, a lot more desperate in that way, and I really love the way the film dived into that, because you really are seeing things from Jojo's perspective, but also seeing how that really does start start to unravel and how Jojo starts to realize what's really going on here. And that also really plays into his relationship with his mother. These two don't have a great relationship. He constantly is asking for his father. His mother is doing what he can to provide for him. There's a really great scene, especially where he asks for his father, and she literally ends up, basically has to have a conversation as both her and his father, and it's great stuff. That's one of the reasons why Johansson's so great in the film. It's a really funny scene, but you also really do care for, because at the end of the day, even though she doesn't support what her son is doing, she is trying to be there for him, and he starts to realize, what his mother really is doing and how she very much is on the right side of things, and that relationship is definitely one of the most integral of the entire film. I really loved where they ended up going with that, and again, the screenplay is just so well written in that way. You really do find yourself caring for all these characters, and none of them feel one-dimensional. I mean, even characters that are the worst, like the Gestapo, you still realize, like, he feels this way because Hitler has poisoned his mind. Hitler has made him feel this way, and that's the case with a lot of these characters. They don't try to portray them as inherently terrible people. They're just people whose minds have been warped, and they themselves are far more sinister because of that. They don't realize how truly just terrible people they've become, and I actually really did love that. A lot of the comedy comes from there, but a lot of the emotion does as well. And the film gets incredibly heavy in the third act, like way more than I really was expecting. There's one event that happens especially that honestly took me completely off guard, but in the best way possible. I have not been that shocked by where this film ended up going in a while. I thought it was probably one of the most shocking moments of the entire year. I truly was not expecting them to go where they did, and it was incredibly shocking, but I think it was not just shocking, it was an incredibly emotional moment and really does propel the story forward. And it's the kind of moment that could kill the entire film. It really could, but because of how well done they built it up throughout the film, and again, because of how fun it is, you're not expecting it to go there, but when it does, it really hits you like a hurricane, and I was honestly on the verge of tears. It's probably one of the most emotional things I've seen all year, but the film did an excellent job with it, and from that point on, that's when I realized just how much I had fallen in love with this film, and how much credit I really do give it for handling that in the way that it did. This could have been a film that was just a lot of fun, but the fact that it went a lot deeper into what was going on at this time than I was expecting, I really do give it props for that. There's a lot of little details that you don't think are as important, but eventually they become way more integral in the story, and again, that's when you know you're dealing with a great writer here, and that's something that Waititi just did such an excellent job with, because then the film really starts to become more about just the severity of what Jojo was going through, because of the fact that he is younger, he doesn't understand a lot of it. He knows what's happening, but he doesn't understand the true horrors, and eventually that changes. Eventually, he is far more aware of what's going on, and the film really does change because of that. And the film is way more intense than I really was expecting. There's one scene especially involving the Gestapo where it's probably one of the most intense things I've seen all year. I mean, I was on edge throughout the entire scene. Where it ended up going is definitely not where I was expecting, but again, it just shows how great the film is to do that bait and switch. It can be very hard to pull that off, but this film does it so well. What is a satire is suddenly far more realistic in that way, and that's the thing. The film is not afraid to dive into the real nitty-gritty of what was really going down, especially in the third act. The film really starts to dive heavily into that, and it could have been a complete tonal change. It could have been very jarring for some people, but I really did appreciate it. I really did think that it worked pretty organically for what was going on here, especially since, like I said, the whole thing pretty much is from this kid's perspective. And I just thought that the screenplay in that way was so well done. It's definitely one of the best in the entire year. It's absolutely hysterical, but again, it also has just this really great message of just how we need to put aside those differences. If we could just put aside our differences, we are going to become better human beings overall. And that's a big part of what this movie is trying to say, is that, we fear those that are different because we've been told they're different. And again, it's it's similar to the ways things are today. I mean, there are certain groups that are so hateful towards each other, but if they really got a second to have a conversation and not be so gung-ho about annihilating the other, they would come to realize that they are very similar in that way. And that's a lot of what Taika is trying to drive at here. He's not just talking about Nazi Germany. He's really using Nazi Germany as sort of an allegory on what's going on today. And I really did enjoy that for sure. And I just thought the screenplay here was so well done. The cinematography in this film is gorgeous looking. It has a real Wes Anderson type vibe to it, but it doesn't feel like Waititi is copying Wes Anderson. He is very much doing his own thing, but you can tell he definitely does have that influence in here. But everything is so bright and colorful and almost fairy tale-like until the film gets a lot more dramatic, and that's when things start to look a lot less, you know, saturated in that way, and I just thought that was just such a brilliant technique. The costumes especially, though, are so on point here, and if there's any film that I think needs to take, like, best costume design, it's this one. It has some of the best of the entire year, and it very much is made for that category. I absolutely loved all of the, like, costume designs and things like that. They really do put you into Nazi Germany quite well. You feel like you're there for in the best and worst ways, and I really love the cinematography here. The score by Michael Giacchino, no surprise, is fantastic. It's definitely one of the best of the entire year. It's very bouncy and fun until, again, it's not, and I just thought his score was fantastic here for sure. And the editing, I thought this film was very well paced for the most part. There really wasn't a single scene that dragged for me. I was really into it the entire time, and even some of the slower scenes, I still was very much into overall. So with a film like this that delivers so much on characters, delivers so much on its messages and things like that, it can be very hard for me to find a flaw. And for a while, I really couldn't think of any, but if I really had to have one, there are some characters here that I did feel were a bit underused, and there is one shift that a character takes towards the end of this film that I just didn't really buy. I had a very hard time trying to figure out if it made a lot of sense, and I just came to the conclusion that it really didn't. But really, other than that, this is a brilliant film that really does solidify just how much of a talent Taika Waititi is. It has some biting social commentary on Nazi Germany. It makes a complete mockery out of the Nazis and all that kind of stuff that was going on, but it also is just a very heartwarming story of two people who are from two very different places in life, but really do come to a great understanding. It has one of the best characters of the entire year in Jojo, which is such a great character study, but also a really great coming-of-age film in that way. It has some great performances from both, you know, Roman Davis, Thomasin McKenzie, Taika Waititi, Scarlett Johansson, just some of the best performances of the entire year. A really great score, just a really fun film overall, but one that I think is going to leave much more an impression on you than you really are expecting. Jojo Rabbit is just simply one of the best films of the entire year, and I'm definitely going to give it an A. But over, guys, in my review of Jojo Rabbit, let me know if you guys saw this movie overall, if your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.